From the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
Hi, welcome to it, Broncos Country Tonight, as we are in phase one of OTAs, early portions of the offseason, but of course we always have an eye on what's coming up for the regular season. And for the Broncos this year, there are really high expectations. So I'd like to sort of start out with Russell Wilson here, new head coaching staff, a conversation about this season is successful if this happens. This season becomes a struggle if this happens. So let's start with it's a successful season if what happens?
Well, this is a successful show just because my hair wasn't as terrible as yesterday, so I want to apologize to the viewers for that. But it's a successful season. Man, I don't want to set the bar too low, but at the same time, like, it's a successful season if you make the playoffs. I mean, that's what this team is trying to do, transition from being a kind of mediocre last couple of seasons, including some bad seasons, to more of a successful playoff-making franchise. And I think if you make the playoffs, that's a whole new season. Anything's possible at that point. So I think the goal needs to be win the West, make the playoffs. I think those need to be the goals.
Okay, let's dial in more for the micro version of this, like as in specific performances of players, performance of the head coaching staff, the coaching staff, that type of thing.
Well, the coaching staff win the West, make the playoffs. The coaching staff, no major blunders. You know, I mean, you're going to be getting your feet wet, you know, is that kind of stuff. And there's going to be issues. You're going to have delay of games on communication issues as you try to get your process down early. There's going to be things like that. But I think no major blunders. You're not taking the wind in overtime. You know, that kind of Marty Morningweg, now the overtime's changed since then, but you get the idea. So I think as long as you don't have major blunders, you know, as far as that kind of stuff goes, I think that's successful for the coaches, and you figure out the way to communicate with your guys. You know, you like we talked about with Steve Atwater. We were talking with him, and you know, it takes up to half a season sometimes to like connect with your guy, and kind of get there, and all that kind of stuff. So I think I think that's part of it. I think for the players, I mean, there's probably statistical benchmarks you could put on that, but I think being able to pressure the quarterback as a defense,
that's a big
getting
one.
off the field on third down. Instead of, you know, because it's a different style of defense. You're trying to get off the field on third down every time. This isn't bend, don't break like it used to be. So you philosophically, you're going to be better. You're going to be different on defense. Offensively, put up points. The 24-point benchmark is very clear. You have to score 24 points a game in the NFL to make the playoffs. Period. Point blank. End of discussion. I know that sounds arbitrary. I know that sounds capricious, but that's the number. 24 points is the number. If you are not able to score that, and the Broncos have not. They've been a 17, 18-point-a-game team for a long time. Now, granted, they've had a good defense, and it's kept them in games. But the data shows it doesn't matter what your defense is. If you don't score 24 points a game, you're not making the playoffs. So the offense, that's the benchmark.
Yeah, and they're averaging under 20 points per game over the last 3 seasons. So
that's like 17.5 points per game.
Yeah, it's really brutal. Last year was over 19. Year before was 20.2. So, yeah, they obviously need to jump up. I appreciate the point about scoring. I'd say early on for me, for the success of the season, it's the offense being on the same page, finding rhythm together.
Well, you grow as an offense through the season, though.
But no, I'm saying being able to as close to hit the ground as running as possible, because that's the thing. There are going to be a little bit of growing pains. You even heard Nathaniel Hackett, when he talked to Albert Breer, make a bit of an NBA reference, saying, well, did they win the title right when LeBron James got to the Lakers? Like, for example, it's like, I mean, they were pretty good. But his point, I think, is valid that sometimes when you integrate, say, a Russell Wilson into a brand new team, the expectation is all of a sudden like, oh, everybody's going to be on the same level as Russ. Well, no, sometimes it takes a little bit of time for everybody to be on that same page, to everybody get on that same level, especially when you're used to what tends to be the other shoe dropping. We're going to struggle. We're going to falter. Problems will happen, especially on the offensive side of the ball. You have to get past that mindset.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see a lot of that from guys that are eager for success, because they haven't been around a quarterback of Russ's caliber. So I think you're going to see a lot of them stepping it up. I think the main thing is just getting on the same page. You know, we talk about scramble drill a lot. You know, when the play breaks down, what are these guys doing? Russ is used to 2 guys that know what he wants, and, you know, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, and what he wants them to do. Are Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and Tim Patrick on that same page? How long does it take for them to get on that same page, to react without thinking, to know that, oh, he's outside the pocket, I got to get vertical. You know, that kind of thing. Instead of coming back for the ball, like a lot of quarterbacks want the receivers to come back for the ball.
Right.
Russ wants you to keep going. I'll get you. You get deep. I'll get you the ball. And so that's a different mindset. for some receivers. You've been coached your whole life, come back to the ball. Now you gotta, now you gotta figure, I need to get deep. So
it's a great example. It's a great example. So getting the offense going early, hopefully, not having too long of a lag as far as getting on the same page. I agree with you with the coaching staff that they need to be able to communicate with everybody. They need to be good at in-game management as early as possible as they can get to that. Defensive side of the ball, I loved your point about getting pressure. Something the Broncos have over the last couple of years really struggled at. Been good in the red zone. Not so great at getting the pressure on the quarterback, which is not really, amounted to, and this is one of the next ones, getting turnovers. Honestly, the defense getting the ball back in Russell Wilson's hand should be priority one on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, turnovers are always the priority. I just think the last scheme didn't really set itself up to generate as many. When you're playing bend, don't break, you're basically letting them get down close to the red zone, and then you're trying to turn them over. Well, the Broncos were turning them into field goals, which is admirable. It's good. But they weren't really generating enough turnovers at that point. They couldn't get enough pressure on the quarterback to dial that up. So I think it starts with pressure on the QB. I think Ejiro Evero is going to dial it up a lot more than what you saw with Vic Fangio, and I think they are going to attempt those kinds of pressures. That'll lend to better sack totals for guys like Bradley Chubb, Draymond Jones, et cetera. But at the same time, it means your corner's got to tighten up. It means your corner's got to be, when you're going to be on an island a little bit more. You got to tighten up. So, I think they're going to be after that in generating turnovers. But I think that starts up front with pressure, and that needs to be the goal. If we're getting pressure, we're going to be able to generate turnovers. Those will come. So it's a chicken egg argument here.
Okay, so on the other side of the coin, the struggle part, right? So we talked about the way they get to success. The way it ends up being a bit of a struggle this year, I'm going to start with projections, right? A lot of the players, the receivers, Pat Surtain in his second year, maybe even Bradley Chubb to a certain extent at this point in his career, we're projecting on what they could be, what they should be based on the talent and the flashes we've seen. But they don't. The Broncos will struggle this year if the projections of those players don't meet reality. If for some reason those guys can't become what we think they are capable of, and this team, because I think the most obvious one is injury, right? Injury is an easy one to say, well, if they're going to struggle this year, it's because they don't have the complement of talented players. I'd say, what if you do have your complement of talented players and they're just not performing the way you thought they'd be?
Well, then that's probably either a communication or a learning deficiency, or both. As a coach, it's
could be scheme.
Well, yeah, it could be a scheme deficiency, but typically that's not. I mean, there's only certain ways to run offense and certain ways to run defense. And if it's a scheme deficiency, that means either one of your players can't perform what's needed inside the scheme, or the scheme itself is philosophically and fundamentally incorrect, which usually at this level you just don't have that. I think that you need to figure out whatever that problem is. If it's not working, you need to figure out what that problem is, whether the problem is the fundamental philosophy or whether it's execution. And then you need to drill down from there and find a way to communicate, how do we patch that? If it is actually a scheme thing, then wow, how did you overlook that? If it is an execution thing, it's how do I communicate that I need you to do this in this situation rather than what you did?
So what I'm meaning by scheme in some ways, and it's just sort of tying perfectly into that, is the offensive line. So the offensive line is going to be seeing a little bit of a change schematically. And some of these guys are right now on a not so great trend as far as what we saw last year. Now, again, different scheme. Hopefully that actually helps them. But again, if we're going under the guise of how does this season struggle? How does this team struggle? Well, the offensive line also through projection doesn't perform up to the level that they need to.
The left side of the line has experience in zone blocking. So Dalton Reisner, Garrett Bowles, those guys will be familiar with it already. I think Glasgow has had some experience with it as well. I don't think Lloyd Cushenberry does. And I know Billy Turner does. I know Compton does. Calvin doesn't really, but I'm sure he can pick it up. So, there are guys in the room that have experience in the scheme, and it's up to those guys to get together as a group and teach each other. Hey, look, this is what we know. What we need to do here. It helps that your starting left side already knows it. But as you look around and trying to get everybody on the same page, you want to be collaborative as a group and say, hey, look, we used to do this way that last year. In this particular instance, we're going to be doing this a little bit differently. So. Yeah,
and then the last thing really for me, because as most teams tend to be, it's Russell Wilson, right? What is Russell Wilson going to be? And that opinion, remarkably, is kind of varied across a lot of the NFL. There are people that, and we talked to James Palmer with NFL Network on Broncos Country Tonight, the radio show. He says, I actually think he has a chance to be better here in Denver. He thinks the complement of receivers, the coaching, the opportunity is going to be so much better, and he's going to really shine in this. But there are people out there that have seen a trend with Russell Wilson, a little bit of his mobility knocked down a little bit, seeing Russell Wilson take a lot of hits, a lot of sacks. He's one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the NFL. Well, then all of a sudden you paint a picture of a guy that can't do as much with his legs, and you wonder what's going to happen. So for me, as this season goes, as a lot of seasons go for a lot of teams, what are we going to get out of the quarterback? We just don't really know right now. It's a bit of a projection.
Well, it's always a projection. So, but you hope that you're getting a return to form in the 2020 season. Last year, obviously, he had the thumb injury, but the year before was Russ's most productive season as a quarterback. So you're going back to that season. You're looking for concepts there that you could take and implement with what you do. And you're asking Russ what he feels comfortable with, and you're kind of like trying to balance all that out because he's a quarterback. He's going to want to throw, and you do need to rein that in a little bit. You don't need him throwing 60 times a game. I mean, I make jokes about letting Russ cook and you wanting Russ to crochet, but at the same time, you do. And in the month of December, you're going to want him handing the ball off a little bit more. Save the wear and tear on the arm a little bit for the playoffs and all that kind of stuff. So you want to find a way to open it up early, get defenses to respect you, and then find a way to be able to hammer it down their throats in the month of December.
Well said. For Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.